Hello friends, welcome to the Cold War Prepper. Tonight we're going to talk about change management and your role as a leader in a post-SHTF environment. So let's talk about Cicero first, and this is about 2,500 years ago. The wise are instructed by reason, the average mind by experience, the stupid by necessity, and the brute by instinct. So one of the things that I want to talk about is change management and your role as a leader in this change management. I've been inspired by a series of 5 books written by Stephen C. Smith called the Stonemont Series. And we just did the book review on book number 5. And he's talking about rebuilding society in this community called Stonemont. And most recently he's talked about the 4 different categories of people who are endemic to this community. And he has what he calls the family, the people who basically founded, original founders or late original founders of the community of Stonemont. And there's about 7 main people in this group. And then he has what he calls friends, and those are going to be people who come in, see what they're doing, and then they're going to put a lot of effort into helping them to achieve the overall goal of the community. So they're going to be people who build inns, who build taverns, who build restaurants, who build livery stables and manufacturing facilities and farms and butcher shops and tanneries and all these other different industries that are going to have to be put back into place. They're going to be totally committed. They're going to give their time, talent, and treasure in order to create something that's going to add value to the community. So those are what he calls friends. The next group are what he called guests. I equate the guests to my time when I was an HR director in manufacturing. You know, the manufacturing workers, I just love them. They're honest people. And their philosophy is, I'm going to come, I'm going to give you everything I've got for 8 hours a day. And in exchange for that, I want a fair day's wages. Give me enough to where I can put a roof over my head, a decent vehicle to get to and from work. I want food for my family. I want to be able to give good presents to my children and my wife for the holidays or for their birthdays. I want to be able to take a vacation with them every once in a while. And I want to do something special with them every once in a while, keep them well clothed. So if you can do that, I will do this. So think of that as being the guests. You know, they're going to be those people. They aren't going to put too much more into it than what you ask of them. But in exchange for doing what you ask them to do, they want you to give them what they think they need in order to live. And then Steve talks about the 4th group, which is the outsiders. Now, the outsiders can be either internal to your community or they can be external to your community. But they're ne'er-do-wells, okay? These are people who give you nothing but heartache. And so I would just say, identify them early on. And as soon as you can, offer them the opportunity to be an exceptional contributor to another community, because they aren't going to be that much value to your community. So there's an old Arab saying, and it says that the greatest danger is not that we aim too high and fail, but that we aim too low and achieve it. So one of the things we want to be careful about doing in our change management and our leadership, and one of the things that Jim Wyatt, the protagonist in this series of books, is doing is making sure that they don't overexpand, making sure that they don't overcommit, making sure that everything is done in a reasoned manner where they can sustain it over time. And so that's what I'm going to ask you to do. Now, if we take a look at the major change management experts, you know, Ken Blanchard, Bill Byam, Spencer Johnson, Rosabeth Cantor Moss, Rosabeth Moss Cantor from Harvard. You know, there's some fantastic change management people out there. And they all pretty much agree there's about 5 different kinds of people. And these are the same groups of people, basically, as what Steve has identified in his 4 groups. So you're going to see where there's a little bit of an overlap, but you're going to identify the basic 4 things that Steve talks about in his groups. And so the first one's going to be the innovator. This is the person who identifies ahead of time. You, right now, You've identified something can happen in the near future. It's going to drastically change the world as we know it. And you are learning things. You are acquiring things. You're acquiring knowledge, skills, equipment, food, all the things you believe are necessary to survive. You are the innovator. Now, imagine your family. Go up to one member of your family and say, hey, look, SHTF is right around the corner. You need to get ready. And they say, oh my God, you're right. What do I need to do? Let me start doing it with you. And that's another innovator. Then you've got the other one. They say, you're full of poo-poo. And I'm not going to do that. And then all of a sudden SHTF happens and boom, that frying pan hits them smack dab in the middle of the face. And they say, oh my gosh, was right. And I need to do something. It's too late now. So I need to go see what I can do to get back in good graces and, let them know that I've changed my mind and they were right and I need to do something about it. What can I do now? And so they're going to basically be dependent upon you, but they're going to be giving you everything they can. They're going to be committed to giving you everything so that you can give them what they need. So we call those early adopters. Very finicky group. Be very cautious with this group, because if you don't treat them special and reward them for being the early adopter before everybody else came on, and they don't feel like they've been rewarded enough, they become the early your biggest enemy, because they will turn on you if they don't feel like they've been appreciated enough. Then there's going to be a time period where the other people are going to sit by and watch. And so you've got the early majority. These people are going to wait until they see, is this on an improving plane? And if I see it going in the right direction, I will join on. You're going to need them to tip that balance so that you're going up and progressing to the direction you need to go. Now, once you get the early majority in and they are helping you, the next major group to come on board is going to be the late majority. I call these the people from Missouri. They're the ones who have been burnt in the past. They were either innovators, early adopters, or early majority in the past. They did not get rewarded. They got burned. And they don't want to get burned again. So they're going to sit back and watch. And they're going to make sure that the early majority gets rewarded the way that they were told for their efforts as being part of that early majority. If they feel that they are being rewarded for their efforts, then the late majority comes on. The late majority may even be more committed than the early majority. So, appreciate that fact. And then, of course, you have the laggards, and the laggards are what Steve calls the outsiders. Wonderful book written by Spencer Johnson. I strongly recommend you get it. It's not that big a book. It's a very thin book. It's maybe 6 by 9, 6 inches by 9 inches, paperback. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? It's a parable, and it's a very funny, I like Spencer Johnson's writing because he always does it in storytelling mode. And so, you're not given a whole bunch of facts, you're given a parable that you get to learn from things. And so basically you've got 2 humans and 2 mice, and they have to go through this maze to get their cheese on a daily basis, to eat and survive, and they identify things along the way, oops, if we're going to be doing this traveling all this time, maybe we need to have an extra pair of shoes. And so you can see that they're learning as they go. And then one of the mice says, wait a minute, I can see the top of the pile of cheese, and I couldn't see that in the past. That means that cheese is dwindling. So we're going to have to seek out another sources of cheese. So they go out and seek another source of cheese. Then all of a sudden, when the cheese is all gone from that original source, the humans who have been doing the same thing over and over and over again, they starve to death. They have no other source. They relied on that one source and didn't make any provisions for change. The mice did, and they've got another source. So what do the minute they find that they start relying on another source? They start looking for a third source. So there are 6 lessons we learned from this book. Number 1, be prepared for change. Look at the indicators that say change is coming. And you see those indicators around us all over right now. So you're ahead of the curve. You've identified the fact that change is coming and you're being prepared for it. Number 2, once the change happens, let go of the past. You can't follow the same routes in the maze that you did in the past. It's not going to get you where you need to go. You need to develop new routes. So you got to let go of the past, or it's going to be a burden. You've got to, that old baggage, you've got to let go of it in order to be free and flexible to move on and where you need to go in the future. the third thing is you've got to identify where it is you want to go. You've got to identify the big picture. This is what I want to accomplish. This is what success will look like. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to go. This is what I want to accomplish. But once you've identified that big picture, divide it into manageable increments of success. So that you're building kind of like this ladder or this staircase where you're constantly moving forward towards the big picture, but you're doing it incrementally. And the reason is because you're going to be showing this to other people to get them to come along with you. And one of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to overwhelm them. People are already going to be overwhelmed with the adapting to the change that's been thrust upon them. And if you give them way too much, if you feed them with the fire hose instead of a teaspoon, you're going to lose them. You're going to wash them away. So, give them those teaspoons, show them what the big picture is, but give them teaspoons at a time. And once they've swallowed that, then they can move on to the next teaspoon. So another thing we have to do is avoid over-analysis. We call it analysis paralysis. So instead of accepting, you've got okay, marginal, and good, but we're looking for best. That's what our big picture is. Well, accept good for right now, because that's going to give you a rest. That's going to give you some momentum, and then you can look for better. And then once you find better, then you can move for best. Don't go for best all the way and sit and wait for what is best and do nothing until you find it, because you may not ever find it. So find out something that's good, and then go for better, and then go for best. And then once you've found that best, then understand the cycle starts all over again. Prepare for change, because change is going to be inevitable. So Ken Blanchard, one of my favorites, I'm certified to teach his stuff. He has 7 steps on what you as a leader can do to help your people through these problems. Those who are coming along with you. Number 1, people are going to feel awkward. They're going to feel ill at ease. They're going to be mortified by the change. And so just let them process that through. Give them some space. Let them come to you instead of you going to seek them out and force them into anything. You've got to be mindful of their needs and their feelings, right? Empathy is going to be important. Number 2, they're going to be focused on what they've just lost and what they've given up in the past. Okay? And so you've got to give them a chance to mourn that loss and be available to adapt that mentality to what's available in the future. So you've got to portray that realistic picture of the future. Lee, you're not going to have, cherry vanilla ice cream every evening for the rest of your life unless we do the following. We've got to develop a pasture for the cattle. We've got to get some dairy cattle. We've got to process the dairy cattle. We've got to get some power so we can power the freezers, so we can churn the cream into ice cream. We've got to have a cherry orchard. So we got to take all these steps in order to get to where you can have your cherry vanilla ice cream every night before you go to bed. So at this point, we need to offer the support that the people need. Do not lie and do not over-promise. Because if you don't meet your promises, they will turn against you in a heartache. If you lie once you lie, you can never regain the confidence of the people again. You've got to be totally honest with them the whole time. Remember, they've already been overburdened with so much change that to some, they'll never recover from it. It's going to be an emotional thing that's going to cause them emotional damage that they'll never recover from. Others, you've got to understand where they are and don't overwhelm them with too much more. That's why I said paint that picture, but then give them easy accomplishing steps, baby steps, if you will, to get to that big picture. Also understand, like we talked about before, people are at different levels of readiness for change. You've got those early innovators, you've got the innovators, you got the early adopters, you got the early majority, the late majority. So people are at different points. And so not everybody's going to come on board as you want them to. They're going to come on board as they want to. So if you understand those stages of where people are, and give them the room that they need to make the decision to join you on their conditions, there'll be a lot more value to you. So they're also going to be concerned about not having enough resources. And you got to be honest to them. You got to say, you know what? We've lost a lot. We're going to have to tighten our belts for a while. We're going to have to be on rations for a while. But if we do it, here's what I see happening at the end of that. And paint a realistic picture. Tell them, I don't know how long we're going to have to be on rations. I don't know how long it's going to take us to produce a crop. But we're going to have to reduce our rations until we have a full crop, and we can sustain that on a regular basis. So, be honest with them. And people appreciate honesty. And then finally, people are going to be out of habit. They're going to want to go back to where they were, the habits that they had in the past, long for things that they haven't given up that old baggage. And we need for them to let go of that in order to go to the future. So some people are going to still have that baggage with them. They're going to go back to their old methodologies. Understand that. Try to help them through developing the new habits and get them on the path to where they need to be. So we're going to add empathy to this now, remember. So we say be kind, polite, respectful. We're going to say empathetic today as well. So remember, we're all in this together so we can come out the other side together. Be kind, polite, respectful, and today empathetic, because togetherness is the key. Take care. Bye-bye.